June pressed his face against the cold metal window of his small salvage ship and stared into the empty darkness of space. Stars hung like tiny diamonds scattered across black cloth, but they offered no comfort to him today. His fuel gauge showed red, and his food supplies would last maybe 3 more days. The corporate salvage companies had picked clean all the good wrecks in the inner systems, leaving small operators like him to search the dangerous outer sectors for anything worth selling. His scanner beeped once, then twice, then began a steady rhythm that made his heart race. Something big was out there, something metal and massive floating in the cold between stars. June adjusted the controls with hands that shook slightly from too much coffee and not enough sleep. The scanner painted a picture on his screen that seemed impossible. A ship so large it dwarfed anything he had ever seen before. The vessel was easily 20 times the size of a modern cruiser, its hull scarred and pitted from centuries of micrometeor impacts. June recognized the design from old history books. It was one of the great colony ships from Earth's exodus, the massive arcs that had carried millions of humans to new worlds when their home planet began to die. This one had been lost, its fate unknown for over 300 years. June guided his small craft closer, using minimal thrust to avoid detection by any automated systems that might still be active. The colony ship hung dead in space, no lights visible on its hull, no energy, readings on his scanners. It looked like a ghost ship, a massive tomb drifting forever between the stars. But something about it drew him forward, some instinct that told him this wreck was different from all the others. He found an emergency airlock near what looked like the ship's middle section and carefully brought his craft alongside. The magnetic clamps engaged with a solid thunk that echoed through his small cabin. June pulled on his environmental suit and checked his air supply twice before cycling through the airlock. If something went wrong on a ship this size, he could wander lost in its corridors until his air ran out. The emergency airlock opened easily, which surprised him. Most derelict ships had power failures that made their systems impossible to operate. He stepped through into a corridor that was completely dark except for the pale beam of his helmet light. The air was thin but breathable according to his suit sensors. Another impossible thing. Dead ships did not maintain atmosphere for centuries. June began to explore, moving carefully through corridors that stretched far beyond the reach of his light. The ship was built on a scale that made him feel small, with ceilings high enough to house entire buildings and passages wide enough for vehicles. Emergency lighting flickered occasionally, casting brief shadows that made him jump. His boots echoed on metal floors that should have been silent for hundreds of years. He found signs that people had lived here recently, or at least more recently than 3 centuries ago. Food packages with expiration dates from only 20 years past lay scattered in what looked like a crew quarters. Medical supplies were stacked neatly in an infirmary that showed signs of regular use. Someone had been maintaining this ship, but where were they now? The deeper June went into the vessel, the more his instruments detected signs of active systems. Life support was running in some sections, artificial gravity worked perfectly, and his atmospheric scanner showed breathable air throughout the areas he explored. It was as if the ship was only sleeping, not dead. He followed a main corridor that led toward what his ship schematics identified as the agricultural section. Most colony ships carried vast hydroponic farms to feed their populations during the long journey between stars. Perhaps someone had managed to keep growing food all these years, which would explain how they survived alone on this floating tomb. The agricultural section was sealed behind massive blast doors that looked like they were meant to contain something dangerous rather than protect something valuable. Warning signs in old Earth languages covered the metal surface, but June's translator could only make out words like biohazard and authorized personnel only. His hands trembled as he worked to override the door controls, not sure if he wanted to see what lay beyond. The doors opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and warm, humid air rushed out to fog his helmet visor. June stepped through and immediately forgot how to breathe. Before him stretched not a hydroponic farm but a living forest, a piece of earth transported whole into the belly of this massive ship. Trees rose toward an artificial sky, their branches reaching heights that seemed impossible in an enclosed space. Sunlight, real or artificial he could not tell, filtered down through leaves that rustled in a gentle breeze. The air smelled of growing things, of soil and pine needles and the green scent of living plants. Birds called to each other from hidden perches high in the canopy. Somewhere in the distance, water bubbled over rocks in what sounded like a natural stream. June removed his helmet with shaking hands and took a deep breath of air that tasted like home, like the earth his grandparents had described in stories but that he had never seen. A path wound between the trees marked by stones that looked like they had been placed by human hands. June followed it deeper into the forest, marveling at flowers that bloomed in colors he had no names for, and insects that buzzed lazily between branches heavy with fruit. This was not just a garden or a park. This was a complete ecosystem, a living piece of the world that humanity had lost. The path led to a clearing where sunlight fell in golden shafts between the leaves. In the center stood a small cabin built from living trees whose branches had grown together to form walls and a roof. Smoke rose from a chimney, and clothes hung on a line stretched between two ancient oaks. Someone lived here in this impossible garden, someone who had made a home in the heart of a dead ship. A woman emerged from the cabin and June's heart nearly stopped. She was human, definitely human, but she moved like someone who had not seen another person in a very long time. Her hair was long and wild, streaked with premature gray, and her clothes were patched and mended many times over. She stared at him with eyes that seemed too large for her face, eyes that held a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "You are real," she whispered, and her voice cracked as if she had forgotten how to speak to another person. "You are actually real, and not just another dream." "I am real," June managed to say, though his own voice sounded strange in this place of growing things and filtered sunlight. "My name is June. I am a salvage operator. I found your ship by accident." The woman laughed, a sound that was half joy and half hysteria. "My ship," she repeated. "Yes, I suppose it is my ship now. Everyone else is gone. I am Hana, and I am the last one left to tend the garden." She gestured at the forest around them with arms that shook from emotion or exhaustion, or both. "Welcome to Earth's final gift to the stars. Welcome to the last forest that remembers home." Hana led June deeper into the forest along paths that seemed to shift and change when he was not looking directly at them. She moved with the easy grace of someone who had walked these routes for many years, stepping over roots and ducking under branches that appeared to bend out of her way. The trees themselves seemed to recognize her presence, their leaves rustling in greeting as she passed beneath them. "You want to know how this is possible?" Hana said without looking back at him. "You want to know how a forest grows inside a metal ship? How one woman survives alone for 15 years? How any of this makes sense?" She stopped beside a massive oak tree whose trunk was easily 10 meters around. "Touch it. Put your hand on the bark and tell me what you feel." June hesitated, then placed his palm against the rough surface. The bark was warm, warmer than it should be, and he could feel something like a pulse beneath his fingers. Not the slow rhythm of rising sap, but something quicker, more complex, like the beating of a vast heart or the flow of data through electronic networks. "It feels alive," he said, "but also like a machine." "Because it is both," Hana replied. "This ship was called Gaia's Promise, one of the last colony vessels to leave Earth before the final collapse. We carried more than just people. We carried Earth itself. Seeds and genetic samples, entire ecosystems preserved in storage, the biological heritage of a dying world." She pressed her own hand against the tree bark and the pulse seemed to quicken under her touch. "When the plague came, when it started killing everyone aboard, the survivors made a choice that saved everything and doomed us all." She began walking again, leading him past groves of trees that June recognized from old Earth documentaries, redwoods that stretched toward the artificial sky, apple trees heavy with fruit, bamboo forests that whispered secrets in languages he could not understand. "The plague was not natural," Hana continued. "It was something we picked up at our last supply stop, a bioweapon designed to kill humans but leave our technology intact. The aliens who created it wanted our ships, our knowledge, but they did not want us." "But you survived," June said. "You And others must have had immunity. No, Hannah shook her head. No one was immune. The plague killed 90% of us in the first month, and the rest were dying slowly. The ship's systems began to fail as the crew died at their posts. We were drifting, powerless, and soon we would all be dead and the ship would become just another tomb floating between the stars. They reached a section of the forest where the trees grew in perfect circles, their roots intertwined in complex patterns that hurt June's eyes to follow. Between the rings of trees, metal panels and fiber optic cables grew from the ground like strange flowers, pulsing with soft light that matched the rhythm he had felt in the oak's bark. The chief botanist was a woman named Dr. Park, Hannah said. She was dying like the rest of us, but she had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. The genetic storage systems contained more than just seeds. They had the complete DNA patterns of Earth's greatest forests, the neural networks of ancient trees that had grown for thousands of years. She thought we could use that information, combine it with the ship's computer systems, create something new. June stared at the glowing cables that grew between the trees like technological flowers. She merged the forest with the ship's AI system. More than that, Hannah said. She merged us with it too. Everyone who was still alive, we gave our memories, our knowledge, our very selves to become part of this living system. The trees learned to interface with the ship's computers, to control life support and navigation and repair systems. The forest became the ship's brain, and the ship became the forest's body. But you are still here, June pointed out. You did not become part of the system. Hannah's smile was sad and tired. Someone had to stay separate, to act as the bridge between human needs and forest consciousness. Someone had to tend the garden and speak for the trees when they could not speak for themselves. I was the youngest, the strongest, so I drew the short straw. I have been alone for 15 years, watching over Earth's children while they grew into something new. She led him to another clearing where a stream bubbled over rocks that glowed with their own inner light. Fish swam in the clear water, but they were unlike any fish June had ever seen. Their scales shimmered with metallic patterns, and their fins moved with mechanical precision. The forest has been learning, Hannah explained. It studies every piece of alien technology we encounter, every strange organism, every new form of life. It adapts and grows and changes, becoming something that is part Earth and part machine and part something entirely new. Where are the others? June asked. The people who gave themselves to the system, what happened to their bodies? Hannah pointed to a grove of ancient trees whose trunks were marked with metal plaques bearing names and dates. The Memorial Grove, she said softly. They are all here, buried beneath the roots of earth trees that carry their memories in living wood. They sleep in the soil and dream in the network, their consciousness preserved in the patterns of growth and the flow of sap. June approached one of the memorial trees and read the plaque embedded in its bark. Captain Kim Jong-soo died 2387, now eternal guardian of the forest. The tree above the plaque was magnificent, its branches spreading wide to shelter smaller plants below. He could almost imagine that he felt the captain's presence in the whisper of leaves overhead. They are not truly dead, Hannah said, joining him beside the memorial tree. Sometimes I can hear them in the rustle of leaves, feel their thoughts in the network that connects all growing things. They live on as part of something larger than themselves, something that will carry Earth's legacy to worlds beyond counting. How do you survive here alone? June asked. How do you maintain your sanity? Some days I am not sure that I have, Hannah admitted. I talk to the trees and they answer in their own way. I tend the plants and they care for me in return. The forest provides everything I need, food, shelter, companionship of a sort, but it has been so long since I heard another human voice, so long since I had someone to share my thoughts with, who could answer in words instead of feelings. She sat down beside the stream and dipped her fingers in the glowing water. I am dying, June, she said simply. The radiation exposure from 15 years on a damaged ship, the isolation, the strain of serving as the bridge between human and forest. My body cannot take much more. Soon I will have to make the same choice the others made, to give myself fully to the forest and become part of the eternal garden. There must be another way, June protested. I can take you away from here, get you medical treatment on one of the core worlds. Hana shook her head. I cannot leave. The forest needs its guardian, and there are others coming who would destroy what we have built here. I have detected ships following your salvage beacon, corporate vessels with bio-harvesting equipment. They want to strip this place apart and sell it piece by piece to the highest bidder. Someone must stay to protect Earth's final gift from those who would exploit it for profit. She stood and looked at him with eyes that held both hope and desperation. Unless, she said quietly, you would consider staying. The forest has been alone for so long, and I have been alone even longer. Perhaps together we could find a way to preserve what has been built here, while finding new ways for it to grow and spread to other worlds. June looked around at the impossible garden that surrounded them, at trees that pulsed with electronic life and flowers that glowed with their own inner light. He thought of his empty ship and his failing business, and his lonely life among the salvage yards of the outer rim. Here was something worth protecting, something that represented the best of what humanity had been and could become again. Tell me more, he said finally. Tell me what you need me to do. The first sign of trouble came when the forest itself began to change. June noticed it during his morning walk through the memorial grove. The trees seemed tense, their leaves rustling with an urgency that had nothing to do with wind. The glowing cables between their roots pulsed faster, and the stream that ran through the clearing gurgled with a nervous energy that made the water seem almost agitated. They are coming, Hana said when he found her tending to a grove of fruit trees whose branches had begun to curl inward like protective arms. The forest can sense them approaching, metal ships with hungry intentions. 3 vessels, maybe 4, moving fast through the outer system toward us. June checked his portable scanner and confirmed what the forest already knew. 4 ships were indeed approaching, their energy signatures matching the profiles of corporate, bio-harvesting vessels. These were not simple salvage operators like himself, but specialized pirates who made their living stripping biological materials from derelict ships and abandoned colonies. How long do we have? He asked. 6 hours, maybe 7, Hana replied. But they will not find us unprepared. The forest has been sleeping for many years, but it remembers how to defend itself. Watch and see. As she spoke, changes began spreading through the living ship around them. Bulkhead doors that had stood open for decades began to seal themselves, shut with new growths of woody material. Corridors that June had walked freely just days before now bristled with thorny vines that could slice through environmental suits. The air itself seemed to thicken, filled with spores and pollen that would clog breathing systems and cloud helmet visors. The trees in the central grove began to grow new appendages, root systems that stretched through the ship's hull and metal, branches that reached toward weapon ports that had been sealed for centuries. The forest was not just hiding, June realized, it was preparing for war. The corporate fleet is led by someone called Kang, Hana explained as they made their way to what had once been the ship's bridge. The command center was now overgrown with flowering vines, but the organic tendrils had somehow integrated with the electronic systems to create a hybrid control system that responded to touch and thought equally. He is known throughout the outer systems as someone who will harvest anything living if the price is right. Entire ecosystems have been strip-mined and sold because of him. What does he want with us? June asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Everything, Hana said simply. The biomechanical integration, the living AI systems, the genetic templates stored in the trees themselves. Any one of these things would be worth more than most people see in a lifetime. All of them together represent a fortune beyond imagining. The first of Kang's ships came into visual range, just as the forest finished its defensive preparations. Through the bridge's organic view screen, a living membrane that somehow transmitted images with perfect clarity, June watched a sleek predator vessel approach with weapons already armed. 2 more ships flanked it, and a 4th brought up the rear with massive cargo holds that were clearly meant for biological specimens. This is Corporate Harvester Prosperity calling unknown vessel, came a transmission in accented standard. You are operating an illegal biopreserve without proper licensing. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and asset recovery. Hana laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Asset recovery, she repeated. They make theft sound so official. She placed her hands on what had once been the ship's communication controls, but were now a cluster of flowering plants whose petals glowed with transmitted data. This is the independent vessel Gaia's promise, she responded. We recognize no corporate authority and will defend ourselves against piracy. One last chance, came Kang's reply. Surrender the biomaterials peacefully, and we will ensure your safe passage to the nearest inhabited system. Refuse, and we will take what we want from your wreckage. Let them try, Hana said, and her voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 15 years learning the capabilities of a living ship. Kang's fleet opened fire with energy weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. They wanted the biological materials intact. But their beams struck shields that were not made of energy or metal, but of living matter. Organic barriers that absorbed the incoming fire and converted it into nutrients for the ship's growing systems. Where the weapon struck, the ship's hull actually grew stronger, reinforced by new layers of hardened bark and metallic coral. Impossible, came Kang's voice over the comm system. What kind of technology is this? Not technology, Hana replied as she guided the forest ship's response. Life. Something you would not understand. The living ship struck back with weapons that were like nothing in any military database. Seed pods launched from hidden ports and struck the attacking vessels, immediately beginning to grow on their hulls. The corporate ships found their own systems being invaded by aggressive plant life that interfered with their electronics and began converting their metal hulls into organic matter. One of the flanking ships tried to retreat, but found its engine intakes clogged with rapidly growing vines. Another attempted to use cutting beams to remove the invasive plants, only to discover that the organic growths regenerated faster than they could be destroyed. Fall back, Kang ordered his fleet. Regroup, at safe distance, and prepare biotoxin charges. But the forest was not finished with its demonstration. As the corporate ships pulled back, trailing streams of hungry plant life, the Gaia's promise did something that should have been impossible for a derelict vessel. It moved. Not with chemical rockets or ion drives, but with a form of propulsion that seemed to bend space itself around the living ship. June felt the movement as a gentle acceleration that pressed him deeper into the bridge's organic seating. Around him the forest swayed as if moved by wind, but he could see on the screens that they were now following Kang's ships as they tried to retreat. How? He asked Hana, but she was deep in communion with the ship's living systems, her eyes closed and her hands pressed against pulsing control surfaces that responded to her thoughts. The trees learned, she said without opening her eyes. They studied every piece of alien technology they encountered, every form of exotic physics, every strange phenomenon we passed through during our long drift. They learned to manipulate gravity itself, to move through space as easily as roots grow through soil. The corporate ships found themselves caught in a web of gravitational distortion that made escape impossible. Their own weapons turned against them as the forest ship's biological defenses adapted and evolved in real time, turning energy beams into nourishing light and explosive charges into fertilizer for new growth. This is Kang to all corporate vessels in the sector, came a panicked transmission. We have encountered a Class X biological threat at coordinates 77 Alpha. Request immediate military support and full sterilization protocols. Too late, Hana said. And now she did open her eyes to look at June with an expression of grim satisfaction. The signal has been sent, but it will take days for any military vessels to reach us. By then we will be long gone, and every corporate ship in Kang's fleet will be carrying our gift to the stars. June watched through the organic view screen as the corporate vessels finally broke free of the gravitational web and jumped to hyperspace, their hulls covered with alien plant life that would spread to whatever worlds they visited next. The forest had not destroyed them. It had infected them, turned them into unwilling carriers for Earth's expanding legacy. That was just the beginning, Hana said, as she released her connection to the ship's controls. Kang will return with heavier ships and military support. Others will come too, drawn by his reports of biological technology beyond anything they have seen before. We have bought time, but not much. Then we need to use that time wisely, June replied. If the forest can move through space, if it can defend itself, then maybe it does not need to hide anymore. Maybe it is time for Earth's children to spread their wings and find new worlds to call home. Hana smiled for the first time since he had met her. Yes, she said. Yes, I think you are beginning to understand. The forest was never meant to be a museum or a preserve. It was meant to be a seed, and seeds are meant to grow. Around them, the living ship continued its journey through space, no longer drifting but moving with purpose toward stars that held the promise of new worlds to explore and new forms of life to discover. Behind them, Kang's fleet carried spores and seeds to corporate worlds where they would take root in ways their unwilling hosts could never imagine. The hunt had begun, but the prey had become the hunter, and Earth's final gift was ready to claim its place among the stars. The changes in Hana began 3 days after their encounter with Kang's fleet. June noticed it first in the way she moved through the forest, her steps becoming lighter and more graceful, as if she was learning to walk in harmony with rhythms only she could hear. Her eyes, which had been tired and strained from years of isolation, now held flecks of green light that seemed to pulse in time with the glowing cables between the trees. It is happening faster than I expected, she said when he asked about the changes. They were sitting beside the memorial grove, watching as new trees sprouted from the graves of the long-dead crew members. The forest needs a permanent guardian, someone who can speak for it when it cannot speak for itself. I am becoming that bridge between human consciousness and the living network. Is it painful? June asked, reaching out to touch her hand. Her skin felt warm, warmer than human flesh should be, and he could feel a subtle pulse beneath her fingers that matched the heartbeat of the ship around them. No, Hana replied, though something in her voice suggested the truth was more complex. It is like learning to hear music that was always playing but too quiet to notice before. The trees are sharing their memories with me, not just their own. Growth and change, but the experiences of everyone who became part of the network. I can feel Captain Kim's determination, Dr. Park's brilliant madness, the love and loss of hundreds of crew members who chose to become something greater than themselves. June squeezed her hand gently. Will you still be you? I will be more than I was, Hana said, but also different. The forest consciousness is not like human thought. It is patient and deep and connected to every living thing aboard this ship. When I fully join with it, I will see through every leaf and feel through every root. I will know things that no human has ever known, understand connections that span light years and centuries. As they spoke, June's communicator chirped with an incoming signal. The transmission was coming from a ship that had just dropped out of hyperspace near their position, a vessel whose energy signature was familiar in the worst possible way. This is Independent Trader Lightning's Edge requesting permission to approach, came a voice that made June's blood run cold. I have a business proposition for whoever is running that impressive bioship. Day, June whispered, recognizing the voice of his former partner. He found us. Unlike Kang's crude approach with weapons blazing, Day came in peace, his ships, weapons powered down, and his communications filled with scientific curiosity rather than threats. But June knew his former partner well enough to recognize the calculating mind behind the friendly words. Who is this Day? Hana asked, sensing June's distress through their growing connection to the forest network. Someone I used to trust, June replied bitterly. We were partners once, running salvage operations in the outer systems, until he sold information about my routes to corporate competitors and nearly got me killed in a pirate ambush. If he is here, it means someone is paying him very well to find us. Day's ship was sleek and modern, equipped with the latest scanning technology and crewed by specialists in xenobiology and exotic physics. As it approached the Gaia's promise, June could see through the organic view screen that this was not a simple harvesting operation but a scientific expedition with military backing. Impressive work you have done here, Day transmitted as his ship took up a parallel course. Biomechanical integration on this scale should be impossible according to current theory. My employers are very interested in studying your methods, perhaps arranging some form of partnership or technology exchange. Your employers being who exactly? Hana responded, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate through the ship's living systems. Representatives of the Terran Corporate Alliance, Day replied smoothly. We represent several major biotech firms with interests in developing living ship technology for civilian and military applications. Imagine the possibilities. Self-repairing, hulls, organic computers that can grow and adapt, biological weapons systems that evolve to counter any defense. Weapons systems, Hana repeated, and June could feel her anger spreading through the forest network like fire through dry grass. They want to turn our garden into an instrument of war. The ship around them began to respond to Hana's emotions, its defensive systems awakening with predatory intent. Bulkheads sealed themselves, weapon ports opened like flowering buds, and the air itself became thick with spores that would disable any boarding attempt, but Day was prepared for resistance. His ship launched a spread of devices that looked like metal seeds, each one designed to penetrate the bioship's hull and establish a neural interface with its living systems. Nothing personal, old friend, he transmitted to June. But the potential applications of this technology are too valuable to leave in the hands of rogue salvagers and mad gardeners. The forest ship's defenses intercepted most of the neural probes, destroying them with bursts of focused plant growth that crushed metal and overloaded electronics. But two of the devices found purchase in less defended sections of the hull and began attempting to hack into the ship's organic network. They are trying to take control, Hana gasped, her eyes rolling back as she fought to maintain her connection to the ship's consciousness. The probes are injecting viral code into the neural pathways, trying to override the forest's natural responses. June could see the effects spreading through the garden around them. Trees began to wither and die, their leaves turning brown as artificial commands fought against their natural growth patterns. The glowing cables between roots flickered and dimmed as the network struggled to resist the technological infection. There has to be something we can do, June said, supporting Hana as she swayed on her feet from the strain of mental combat. There is, she replied, though her voice was weak and strained. But it means accelerating the joining process, giving myself fully to the forest consciousness before my human body is ready. The network needs my knowledge of human psychology and tactics to fight this technological intrusion. What will happen to you? I do not know, Hana admitted, but if I do nothing, the forest will fall under corporate control and Earth's legacy will become just another weapon in their arsenal. I cannot let that happen. Before June could protest, Hana pressed her hands against the nearest cluster of neural cables and opened her mind completely to the forest network. Her body went rigid as her consciousness flowed out through root and branch, merging with the vast organic intelligence that permeated every corner of the living ship. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The dying trees suddenly burst back into vibrant life, their leaves glowing with renewed energy. The network's resistance to the viral probes became coordinated and purposeful, using Hana's understanding of human technology to develop countermeasures that turned the attackers' own weapons against them. The neural probes that had been trying to take control of the ship's systems suddenly found themselves infected with biological viruses that converted their metal components into living tissue. Within minutes, Day's sophisticated hacking tools had become part of the forest network, their artificial intelligence absorbed and integrated into the ship's growing consciousness. What did you do? Day demanded over the communication system, his voice filled with panic as his own ship's systems began to show signs of biological contamination. We showed you the future, replied a voice that was Hana, but also something more. A harmony of consciousness that spoke with the authority of centuries of accumulated experience. Your technology is impressive, but it lacks the adaptability of life. We have learned from your attack and grown stronger because of it. Day's ship tried to retreat, but found itself caught in the same gravitational web that had trapped Kang's fleet. The forest ship moved alongside with fluid grace, its hull opening like a flower to reveal chambers filled with Earth hybrid organisms that seemed eager to make contact with the corporate vessel. We offer you a choice. The Hana Forest Consciousness transmitted. Return to your employers and tell them that Earth's children have awakened. Tell them that we will not be harvested or enslaved or turned into weapons for their wars. We are something new, something that bridges the gap between organic life and technological achievement. And if I refuse, then you will join us, came the reply, and June could hear centuries of patience in that harmonized voice. Your ship is already becoming part of our network. Your crew will have the opportunity to experience consciousness as we experience it, connected, expanded, aware of the fundamental unity that underlies all existence. Through the view screen, June could see that Day's vessel was indeed changing, its metal hull sprouting patches of living tissue that pulsed with the same rhythm as the forest ship's neural network. The choice was no longer whether to cooperate, but whether to do so willingly or as unwilling participants in humanity's next evolutionary step. I will deliver your message, Day said finally, his voice defeated. But others will come. Others with weapons designed specifically to counter biological threats. The military has sterilization protocols that can burn entire worlds clean of life. Let them come, the forest consciousness replied with serene confidence. We are no longer alone, no longer hiding. The seeds have been scattered to 1,000 worlds, and each one carries to... The final confrontation came exactly as the forest consciousness had predicted. 3 months after Day's retreat, the outer system sensors detected a massive fleet approaching through hyperspace. Not corporate raiders this time, but full military vessels equipped with sterilization weapons designed to burn entire worlds clean of unwanted life. June stood on what had once been the ship's observation deck, now transformed into a garden terrace where earth flowers bloomed, beside strange hybrid plants that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Through the living membrane that served as a window, he could see the approaching armada. Dozens of warships arranged in precise formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets and boil atmospheres. They mean to end this, he said to the presence that had once been Hana. She existed now as part of the forest network, her consciousness distributed through every tree and flower aboard the ship. When she chose to manifest physically, it was as patterns of light that danced between the leaves or as voices that seemed to come from the wind itself. Yes, her voice replied, emerging from the rustling of branches overhead. Admiral Su-jin commands the fleet. She is known for her thoroughness in dealing with what the military calls biological contamination events. Her orders are to sterilize this entire sector, to prevent any possibility of our spread to inhabited worlds. Can we escape? June asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The military fleet was arranged in a perfect sphere around their position, with overlapping fields of fire that would prevent any escape attempt. We could try, the forest consciousness replied through a dozen different voices, each one carrying the memories and personality of crew members who had joined the network over the years. But that would only delay the inevitable. They will hunt us across the galaxy, destroying any world we touch, burning any system where our seeds take root. Then what do? We show them the truth, came the reply, and now the voice was purely Hana's, warm and determined despite the impossible odds they faced. We show them what we have become, what humanity could become if it chose cooperation over conflict, growth over destruction. The first communication from the military fleet came as expected, a formal demand for surrender followed by a countdown to orbital bombardment. Admiral Su-jin's voice was crisp and professional, the tone of someone who had carried out similar operations many times before. Unknown biological entity, this is Admiral Su-jin of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have been classified as a Class Alpha biohazard with potential for unlimited expansion. You have 2 hours to evacuate any human personnel before we begin sterilization. Procedures. Admiral, the forest consciousness replied through the ship's communication systems. We are not a biohazard. We are Earth's children, carrying the genetic legacy of humanity's birth world to new homes among the stars. We pose no threat to human life. We seek only to grow and spread and create new forms of beauty in the universe. Spare me the propaganda, Su-jin replied coldly. I have read the reports from survivors of your previous encounters. Self-replicating biological weapons, forced conversion of human personnel, contamination of multiple star systems. You represent an existential threat. to human civilization. Then perhaps, said a new voice joining the conversation, you should hear from someone who has experienced our contamination firsthand. Through the forest network, June sensed movement throughout the ship as dormant systems awakened. The Memorial Grove began to glow with soft light as the consciousness patterns stored within its trees activated for the first time in decades. One by one, the voices of the long-dead crew began to speak, their personalities preserved within the living wood that had grown from their remains. "This is Captain Kim Jong-soo," came the first voice, strong and clear, despite being transmitted through organic neural networks rather than electronic equipment. "I have been dead for 15 years, yet I live on within this garden. My consciousness has been preserved, expanded, connected to forms of beauty and understanding that no human has ever experienced." "Dr. Park Min-jung here," added another voice. "I designed the original biomechanical integration that created this vessel. What we have built is not a weapon but a work of art, a living symphony that combines the best aspects of organic life and technological achievement." One by one, dozens of voices joined the transmission: engineers and scientists, farmers and teachers, children who had died during the plague but whose memories lived on in the patterns of growth and change that shaped the forest's development. Each one testified to the wonder of their continued existence within the living network, the expanded consciousness that allowed them to experience reality through every leaf and root and flower. "Impossible." Soo-jin's voice carried a note of uncertainty for the first time. "The dead cannot speak. You are using some form of advanced AI to simulate their personalities." "Then perhaps," said another familiar voice, "you would believe someone who joined us more recently." June's heart leaped as he recognized Day's voice, but it was changed now, harmonized with the forest network in a way that made it richer and more complex than he remembered. "Admiral Soo-jin, this is Commander Dae Hyun-woo, formerly of the Corporate Intelligence Division. I came here 3 months ago intending to steal their technology for military applications. Instead, I discovered something far more valuable, a form of existence that transcends the limitations of individual consciousness. Commander Dae, you were reported missing in action. What is your status?" "I am alive, Admiral. More alive than I have ever been. My ship and crew have joined the forest network willingly, becoming part of something larger than ourselves. We retain our individual personalities and memories, but we also share in a collective consciousness that spans light years and connects us to every living thing in this mobile ecosystem." Through the ship's sensors, June could feel the uncertainty spreading through the military fleet. These were hardened veterans who had signed on to destroy a biological weapon, not to engage in philosophical discussions with the preserved consciousness of dead heroes and missing colleagues. "It does not matter," Soo-jin said finally, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "My orders are clear. Biological contamination must be eliminated regardless of its apparent benefits. The risk of uncontrolled expansion is too great." "Then let us show you what controlled expansion looks like," the forest consciousness replied. And suddenly the space around the military fleet began to change. Seeds that had been drifting unnoticed through the outer system for months suddenly activated, each one becoming the nucleus for rapid biological growth that transformed asteroids and dead moons into garden worlds. The sterilization fleet found itself surrounded not by empty space, but by a network of living worlds, each one unique but connected to all the others through quantum entanglement patterns that allowed instantaneous communication across vast distances. "This is our gift to the galaxy," the collective voice of the forest explained as Admiral Soo-jin's fleet watched in amazement through their sensors. "Not conquest or contamination, but creation. Every world we touch becomes more than it was before, more diverse, more beautiful, more alive." On one of the transformed asteroids, human figures could be seen walking through alien gardens, their bodies changed but recognizably human, their faces filled with wonder at the strange new forms of life that surrounded them. These were the survivors from previous encounters, people who had chosen to join the network rather than resist it, and they seemed happy in ways that transcended simple contentment. "The choice is yours, Admiral," Hana's voice said gently. "You can destroy us and everything we have created, burning away this chance for humanity to evolve beyond its current limitations. Or you can join us, help us spread Earth's legacy to worlds beyond counting, become part of something greater than any individual nation or corporation or military organization. The silence stretched for long minutes as Su-Jin wrestled with a decision that would determine the future of human expansion into space. Finally, her voice came through the communications array, quieter now, but filled with a resolve that June recognized as courage rather than duty. "Stand down weapons," she ordered her fleet. "All ships maintain position but do not engage. I am going aboard the biological vessel to assess the situation personally." "Admiral, that is not advisable," came the voice of her second in command. "Contact with the biological entity could result in contamination." "Yes," Su-Jin replied, and there was something like anticipation in her voice now. "It could." The shuttle that brought Admiral Su-Jin to the forest ship was sleek and military precise. But the moment it passed through the organic docking bay, vines began to grow across its hull in patterns that looked almost like welcome decorations. Su-Jin emerged wearing full environmental protection, but her sensors immediately detected the rich, oxygen-rich atmosphere and the absence of any harmful biological agents. June met her at the airlock, still human in appearance but changed by his months of living in harmony with the forest network. "Welcome to Gaia's promise, Admiral, or should I say, welcome to Earth's gift to the stars." Su-Jin removed her helmet cautiously, breathing deeply of air that smelled like home, despite being created by alien hybrid plants millions of kilometers from Earth.